Welcome to Season 4, Episode 25 of the Outlap F1 Podcast, part of the Ship It Studios Podcast Network, and this is the 2022 British Grand Prix race review. I am your host, James, along with my wonderful co-host, Andy. Andy, happy 4th of July. This weekend on British soil, the American team scores double points, and the young American driver scores his first F2 win. What a weekend.
The colonies still can, apparently. I love it. Just an amazing weekend for all the heavy that went into it. And this is what I love about Formula One. This happens every time. Whenever you think the sport, is coming apart at the seams or there's a problem with it, you get a race like this and you all remember why you fell in love with it in the first place. So what a heck of a British Grand Prix weekend. Woo!
Hell yeah, pure chaos at the beginning, which we'll get into in just a minute. But first, I must remind everybody you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast. Check out our link tree on our Twitter profile page. Do us a solid and click like and subscribe on YouTube, or click the 5-star button if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any podcasting app with a rating system. Really helps us out to get our show out there. You can email our show at chatnow@outlapf1.com. You can check out our website at www.outlapf1.com, where you'll find all of our old episodes, including our F1 for Beginners episode, back on episode 4 of this season. Make sure you check that out if you are new to the sport, and what a race to start with. You can check out Relap with Deanna, where she'll have her British Grand Prix review coming up shortly, I'm sure. So make sure you check that out. And then, Andy, tell me about Outlap F1 Nation.
Yeah, thank you as always to our monetary supporters, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Cody Walsh, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, Mary Brown, Jonathan Scott, and he's still enjoying his MotoGP summer break, Matt Polanski from the Red Sector MotoGP podcast.
Thank you, Andy. And if you would like to help support the show as well, you can find a link for that in our show notes. Any donations go right back to the show, and we truly appreciate each and every one of them. You can check out Manscaped for all your manscaping needs. Use code OUTLAP, that's OUTLAP, all one word, for 20% off and free shipping. And you can get a great shirt like this. The Scuderia is back at thef1guy.com. Our boy Vincenzo Landino has some t-shirts up there, so go check that out. And another sponsor, we got Athletic Greens with www.athleticgreens.com/emerging for some delicious and nutritious goods. And a new sponsor this week is the Portage Park Development Project, a thriving community in the Upland Metaverse. If you are from Chicago, Portage Park might sound familiar. That's because the Upland Metaverse is based on real-world cities and properties, and Portage Park is an actual neighborhood right here in Chicago. The Metaverse version of Portage Park is the most developed neighborhood in Upland, with over 700 supportive members and property owners, enjoying competitions, community initiatives, and local shops with monthly town hall meetings to connect with fellow Uplanders. And now, racing is coming to Upland. Portage Park are developing a racing team ready to fight for the top step of the podium. We have a training academy for drivers and racetracks in development, making the most of our shops and local attractions. We want to show the best Portage Park has to offer. Come join us. Links to the Portage Park Discord server, racing track maps, and socials are in our podcast show notes. We hope to see you in the metaverse. All right, Andy, housekeeping items out of the way. Let's dive in with the headline of the day. Why don't you go first?
My headline of the day, I love this quote. Stop inventing. We had an absolute cracker of a race where Ferrari upside down themselves into a maiden win for the guy, my bet is alive, is back alive. I thought it was dead. Carlos Sainz, the feel-good story. That's one headline. The other one is, on a more serious note, thank God for the Halo. 2 instances this weekend where that piece of safety equipment that I'm sure when it first came out we all hated, did its job and did so in spades this weekend. So happy to see that a lot of the safety equipment that they designed did its job. Everybody walked away. That's the bottom line. As gnarly as some of these cars are going to look like post these wrecks, everybody walked away and was okay.
Yeah, just once again, the Halo saves the day twice this weekend. So what an invention, much needed this weekend, which we'll get into here in a minute. For John, his headline of the day is back to the days of being disappointed with a P3, and that's not a bad thing. So happy with his boy Lewis Hamilton today. My headline, simply race of the year contender. I think this was probably the best race so far this season, and it is going to be hard to top. I hope it is beaten by one of these races, because then we're in for truly a real treat. Definitely enjoyed it. I can't believe how much fun I had watching this race, even though my boy Charles Leclerc got royally fucked, Andy, and it was tough.
We will get into all of that.
Yes. But first,
in a little bit.
But first, Andy does his thing with giving us a qualifying recap, which was pretty wet and rainy. So why don't you take that away, Andy?
Absolutely. It was a wet and wild and woolly qualifying where everybody was on. Could not tell if the track conditions were getting better or worse. But going out in P20 in that qualifying session was Lance Stroll. P19 was Mick Schumacher. P18 was Sebastian Vettel. P17 was Kevin Magnussen. P16, Alex Albon. Advancing to Q2, but going no farther, in P15 was Esteban Ocon. P14 was Daniel Ricciardo. P13, Yuki Tsunoda. P12 was Valtteri Bottas. And just missing out on the top 10 was Pierre Gasly.
Andy, I hate to interrupt you, but I think you're making a mistake. You haven't said Nicholas Latifi yet.
That's true, because advancing into Q3 for the first time in his career, we'll get into the lap time and the little weirdness of it in a minute, was in P10, that Nicholas Latifi. P9 was Joe Granu. P8 was George Russell. P7, Fernando Alonso. P6 was Lando Norris. P5, Lewis Hamilton. P4, Sergio Perez. P3, Charles Leclerc. P2 was Max Verstappen. And a pole position for our Spaniard with a lap time of 1:40.983, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari.
Yeah, what a lap there. And lucky in qualifying, potentially lucky in the race, Carlos Sainz, because Leclerc and Verstappen, it looked like both were going to beat that lap. Leclerc then pulled a 360 on track, which caused Verstappen to slow down with some yellow flags briefly, so caused both of their last times to not be worth anything after starting off so hot. But I think one of my shout-outs from qualifying was both Max and Leclerc with perfectly done 360 spins. So that was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, the yellow flag that then was suddenly cleared, but if you were in that zone, well, somebody, it was ruining the last lap. And it was interesting. The best lap times, the best track conditions was actually Q1, because the rain actually got more intense as Q2 went on. A lot of guys got caught out. If you tried to wait the track out, specifically, I can think of Daniel Ricciardo, Esteban Ocon. Both of those guys tried to wait the track out, tried to see if it would get maybe a little bit of track improvement. Did not happen, did not come, did not set very good lap times as a result. Q3, Nicholas Latifi. What else can you say other than being at the right tire at the right time, proving that anything is possible and the rain is the great equalizer. But he makes P10 on pure pace. There's the graphic when they show the recaps, I think on Ted's notebook, when they put it up, it hurts my brain because it says Alex Albon qualifies, let's see, where was he? A 142.078 in P16, and it says Nicholas Latifi qualifies in P10 with a lap time of 203.095. It just hurts my brain, but it's correct. But it hurts my brain.
Only Latifi. Yeah, but definitely an entertaining and wet qualifying session on Saturday, which led us into Sunday for just an absolute epic race here. So before we get into the finishers, I think it's important we talk about lap one, really before we even got to a single turn.
Before the second safety car line, as it turned out.
Yeah, things got pretty crazy, pretty fast. Watching on the broadcast, they're showing the shot that kind of shows hold down the whole grid as the cars are coming around that first corner. And off in the distance, you just see this like plume of dust and like sparks and a car just going flying off track into the gravel. And I think it was it Brundle or was it I think it was Crofty saying, "Oh, George Russell goes off the track, ending his streak of top 5 finishes." And I was like, that car was upside down. Like, that was Russell. Holy shit. And then all of a sudden they show it again. And well, they didn't show that video for a while, but then it turns out it's actually Zhou Guan Yu that does it. And things got really sketchy really fast because it had to have been a good, half an hour before we saw any replays whatsoever. And that's maybe one of the scariest moments in sports when you don't see a replay instantly. So kind of walk me through what you saw, Andy, and then let's dive into that a little bit. Yeah,
I mean, I was trying to cover kind of the first lap, and the part of it that was so scary about this result, and if you haven't seen it, go watch it. You're probably better to get the visual than for me trying to totally talk everybody through it. But it was how quickly Zhao Guanyu's car ended up upside down. And I think it was just where it got contacted and everything else. And then as he's going off into the gravel, the roll hoop is gone, which is something you almost never see. But then as he's approaching the tire barrier, whatever was left of the roll hoop dug into the gravel. And when it dug into the gravel, it caused the car to start to do this, started to spin. And when it launched it, where it dug in was like the perfect spot to launch it, one, into the air, and two, over the protective tire barrier that's there. And he ends up hitting floor first. And again, this is just luck. He hits floor first into the catch fence, which is protecting spectators, marshals, and everybody behind it. So, I mean, it's reminiscent of Fernando Alonso in Australia in that horrific McLaren crash. I think it was 2016, when he got into it with, I think, Esteban Gutierrez. And it was the same deal where it's like the car is rotating and it's airborne. Unbelievably scary situation. When you don't see instant, shots of everybody involved that they don't know, so therefore they can't show.
Yeah.
And you knew that, I didn't see people running uber fast. Like, I always look for body language of what you can see, even though they're not showing you what's going on. It looked like everybody was just trying to get to Zhao's car.
Including George Russell.
And we're going to talk about George Russell in just a minute. But they literally couldn't get him out of the car for half an hour. Now, as it turned out, thank God for the halo. He was okay. He was nestled in his survival cell for the entire time. And it was just a matter of them getting the car unwedged from the little wedge that it was left in, and then the extraction team being able to get him out. So a very scary situation. We got probably the best result was about a half an hour later. They broadcasted this to the track too. It was Alfa Romeo radio to Bottas telling him that Zhao was okay.
Yeah, I mean, one of the takeaways I had too was, like you mentioned, the catch fence. It's like, just looking at it, you're like, it just looks like a chain link fence. How's that gonna stop a car? And then when you actually see it work, it's like, holy shit! Like that, I don't know how it's so strong, but to handle that kind of force when that car flipping over is just absolutely incredible. And then after knowing that Zhou was okay, now it's like, okay, now let's go find some of these replay, and like hoping that somebody in the stands right there had gotten video of that. And there's a couple people that have, and it is just, it
is every bit as scary as you think it would be. It is a car careening toward you at what's still got to be over 150 miles an hour. It digs in and then goes over the catch fence and literally hits the catch fence, and the catch fence does its job and just disperses all of that thing, and it just dropped him straight down. And that's exactly what that stuff is designed to do. I know there are specialized companies. I've seen websites that actually promote them that say, hey, we specialize in racing catch fences. And there is a whole technology and a whole ton of engineering that goes into it. It's the thing you hope you never need it, but you are damn happy that it's there, because just unreal scene. I have never seen a car do that. I've been watching racing for 20 years. I've seen some horrific NASCAR crashes that have ended up in the catch fence. Yeah. But I've never seen an F1 car do what Zhao's car did.
Same, yeah. I mean, the technology that they have for those fences to keep cars on the track is amazing. They could probably work a little bit on the fencing to keep people off the track, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, why don't you take a second on George Russell and some of your thoughts on him today?
Okay, so George Russell, who I know is being lauded on Twitter for being a hell of a guy, and I believe his heart was in exactly the right place. He gets out of his car. He wants to go check on Zhao. I get it, but in the same vein, George, the best thing you should do is stay in your car. You are adding confusion and emotion to a situation that has, at that minute, too much of both. He's in a racing suit. He has no specialized equipment. And oh, by the way, once he got out of the car, he unplugged his radio, which was probably the best thing that he could have done, was stay in the car, be on the radio, and tell everybody what he was seeing. That would have been the right thing to do. I get it. I understand that the camaraderie and you want to go help your buddy, but the best thing you should do in that situation is leave it to the experts. I've talked to EMTs before. I've talked to people who work, at Coast Guard in Chicago. I knew somebody once, and they said the number one thing is get the family and the friends out of the way and let us work. You yelling at us, pointing at us, doing whatever is hindering. Actually, it does more harm than good. It hinders the process. The marshals who were there did a hell of a job. The extraction team did a hell of a job. Everybody, all the safety stuff did its job. I understand, George, again, was trying to be a good guy. I'm not trying to lambast him here, but the best thing you should have done was just stay in the car.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what you're going to do in the heat of the moment, I guess. But, yeah, and then to take yourself out of your car and go running across the gravel when you don't know what else is going on behind you, which there's plenty of carnage behind him, too. It's just like keep yourself as safe as possible and just stay in the car. And
other potential danger in front of him, too, as it turned out, that we didn't even know about.
Yeah, and I would have been not a happy camper if they had allowed Mercedes to put his car back on the grid after that, too. That would have been something else.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much a cut and dry rule. Once you get out of the car, and I think once your feet touch the floor, that is game over, regardless of the damage to the car. The car was not able to make it back on its own, versus the other cars like Ocon and Tsunoda and Gasly to a certain extent that could. They managed to come all the way around and get back into the pit lanes, and therefore they could continue the race. So, yeah, that is a cut and dry, in or out type of rule. So, and they applied it correctly.
So let's rewind a little bit to how the whole thing started here. We have this new tire rule coming into this year where drivers don't have to use the tires they qualified in Q2 on. Russell, only driver starting on hards, right? Do you blame the tire rule at all? Because on today's starting grid, I said, Russell was on hards. Softs, we had Max, Seb, K-Mag, Latifi, importantly, and Albon. Because at the start, there was a few drivers that had just horrific starts on the first start today. George Russell and Zhou Guanyu were two of them. It's a bad start when Latifi goes flying by you at the start. And he did exactly that. He split Russell and Zhou just like perfectly down the middle, and he's off. So now you get Gasly, which is probably the main onboard we're seeing a lot of this crash. So he sees that happen, and he's on mediums just like Russell and Zhou were, but he had a much better start, and he sees that giant opening that Latifi just fit through, and it's like, shit, if Latifi can do it, I probably can too. And he stuck his nose in there, and at that point, Russell's coming to the left to cut him off. So we can talk in a second who we think the blame is on there, but that's ultimately what led to the happenings there, because Russell was clipped by Gasly trying to back out of it then, and then he clipped Zhou's right rear, and then Zhou flipped, and we just talked about the rest of that. So who are you placing the blame on here, Gasly or Russell? And if it's both, then which one gets more of it?
Yeah, I don't know that I think it's Russell for a combination of two things. One being on the hard tire, which is a tough ask to make. That is the hardest compound that Pirelli has. They don't make them any harder. That was the C1 hard. So it wasn't like, it's a C3 acting as the hard tire. This was the hardest one that they had. That's that's got to be the most difficult tire to make a standing start that they have. Trying to get temperature in that tire as we went through the race and people put that tire on, you were hearing on the radio it was taking 2, 3, 4 laps for that tire to really come in temperature wise. So when you only have one formation lap, it seems to think that no matter how much weaving you would have done, getting tire temperature into that tire was probably not up to spec. Versus other guys who were on softer compounds who probably had tires a lot more in the window. Now, the other thing, you're absolutely right. There was a ton of people who had awful starts, and you almost never see that much wheel spinning going on. I don't know if that was a characteristic of. I know that they let them make practice starts at the end of each of the sessions, but I don't know if it was all. It'd be interesting to see if we go back and look at it. Was it the even runners that were having the problems on the line that wasn't necessarily the preferred start grid? Because there's not a whole lot of running there, versus the odd numbered positions, which are generally more on the racing line and have more rubber down just throughout the course of the weekend. Now, the other X factor was it rained so much on Saturday that all of the practices, no matter what you did on the grid, got washed away. So you really only had an F3 race in the morning and an F2 race that don't put down nearly the same amount of rubber that an F1 car would.
So who are you giving the blame to, Andy? You're not going to politician me, sir.
No, I mean, I'll probably give it more to George just for being on the wrong tire in that situation. I didn't get the read. I didn't think he was setting himself up for success. He was going to have to survive the start no matter what he did. Gasly going for a gap. I mean, it's lap one.
Exactly.
That's when you do that. Regardless of if you're faster or slower than the guy in front or behind. That's when you
I'll give the blame more so to Russell as well. Not just for being on the hards, but when you have that terrible start, you get blown by Latifi, so you know you're really slow right now. You got to know that somebody else is going to be coming behind you, so you got to be looking instead of just going to the left to try and cut somebody off or to try and block somebody. You kind of got to be a little bit more aware than that. And it's not like he's not used to in the middle of the shit racing with guys at starts, because that's what he's been doing his whole career. So yeah, I feel disappointed with that. However, we'll get into the predictions at the end of the show like we always do, but I did predict George Russell wasn't going to finish this race, so I did nail that one.
Yes, you did.
If only I could have bet that. That would have been pretty nice. All right. So,
you had the right odd guy out of the top six.
The rest of the order, not so much, but so then for the rest of the back markers, well, actually, real quick on Albon, because I mean, Zhou's was really scary, but Albon's arguably maybe scarier because I mean, the wall he ran into was concrete. And he hit that wall freaking hard after, was it Seb that kind of ran right into the back of him.
Yeah, I mean, he got turned and nose went straight into the concrete wall. Looked like it was very significant contact. The front nose and wing obviously fully destroyed. He was taken to a local hospital and was kept there for a good amount of time. It wasn't until about maybe, I think, 2 o'clock local time here, which is about 8 p.m. in England, that we finally got the word from Williams. It was a press statement that said that he was treated, released, and is otherwise okay, bumps and bruises. But that was the scarier of, I think, the medical situation, because Zhou, for all of the pomp and circumstance around that, and it was justified, was walked out basically unscathed. They took him to the medical center and they checked it and they released him. Where Albon actually had to get transported. Yeah,
like Zhou's incident kind of involved a lot of the different safety aspects of F1 with the halo, the tire barrier, the catch fence. Albon ran into a concrete wall, and there's no give there, so that could end up really, really bad, especially we know in American racing. So, go ahead.
Well, and it stands to wonder if you don't see more of like the safer barrier technology, which is, maybe get deployed in places where you might not think.
Yeah, because you really don't think that's going to happen. Now the starting straight, but like literally anything can happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So then just to go quickly through the back markers, we'll kind of jump over this since we had a long talk there. But obviously Albon DNF, Zhou Guanyu DNF, George Russell DNF, Bottas and Gasly DNF, Esteban Ocon as well DNF. His came later in the race, which we'll get into. Because that really threw a wrench into things. But then you got Yuki Tsunoda, the first of the finishers, in 14th. Then your boy Danny Ricciardo back in 13th. So I'm going to give you a chance just to skip over Danny Ricciardo unless you got something to say.
I mean, I feel like a broken record at this point, saying the same things. Not on it enough in the qualifying. I don't know. I really don't know. I think I almost wish he would have some sort of a blow up on the radio, because then I would think that he actually feels something in the car. Because all I hear is understood. Yeah, I'll try this. Yeah, I'll do this. Roger, understand. It's just not working for me.
I hear what you're saying with that, though. It almost hurts more to be like that than like. It's disappointing. Hopefully he gets that turned around, because he is a fan favorite.
Yeah.
So then moving right into the midfield here, Nicholas Latifi turns his top 10 finish into a 12th place finish. Which means now he is ahead of Nico Hulkenberg. So congratulations, Latifi. You're no longer 21st out of 20 racers.
The 21st person is in the 20 right, properly. Finally, 9 or 10 rounds in, or wherever we are, is finally in the proper position.
And then the other driver with a rich father finishes right ahead of him, 11th place, Lance Stroll. So then into the points finishers, the first of the Haas drivers, K-Mag in 10th place, Sebastian Vettel in 9th, Mick Schumacher with his first points finish in 8th place, Max Verstappen all the way down in 7th with an issue that we'll get into, Lando Norris in 6th, Fernando Alonso in 5th, Charles Leclerc screwed over, finishes in 4th. Real quick first, let's talk about Mick Schumacher. I'll bring it up since I'm the one who's been bashing him lately. You'd think, hey, good job, he finally got points. Well, 6 guys had a DNF in order for him to get those points, so I'm not really sure if I'm on the whole, hey, Mick Schumacher's turned a corner. Yeah, he finished ahead of K-Mag, but I think the qualifying battle's like 8-2 or 7-3 in K-Mag's favor. So, until Mick Schumacher starts routinely beating an actual driver instead of the piece of shit he was going up against every week last year, I don't know. I'm still not a believer.
It's a fair critique. I mean, but I thought for once he actually had a relatively clean race, and it was nice to see no reliability issues, no pit stop issues from Haas that I saw when I went back and looked at it, and a really nice battle with the world champion right at the end of the race there. I've seen some talk on Twitter about, was Max being fair or foul? Other than the very last lap, I went back and I watched that entire sequence. Max is doing nothing wrong until even questionable until the last lap, and even then, and I've said this many times. I guess this is my American coming out. I am a rubbing is racing is fine so long as you don't necessarily go over the line. I don't have a problem with the move, and I said it. What is it? Last year in Austria when Norris got this penalty, if you ease another driver off to the outside when he doesn't have that corner, I don't have a problem with you running him out of room. I really don't. So that's kind of what I saw. I saw a lot of that. And Mick, to his credit, did the thing that so many other guys don't do, which is realized where he was and backed out of it and said, you know what? This ain't worth crashing over. I'll back out of it. And therefore, look, there's no contact or minimal contact, and both drivers continue to go on. So it was, I think, a tough battle, maybe on the margins. I'm sure there's going to be some people that disagree with me on that, but I thought there wasn't necessarily a penalty or anything.
Yeah, I mean, it sure was some close fighting, some questionable stuff, I guess, borderline. But you know what? Max had no grip at that point. He didn't have a rear end for the majority of the race, and they even took out a lot of the front wing to try and balance the lack of grip. But he was fighting for every position he could get. He doesn't normally fight for 7th place, but he realizes that championship can come down to a tie into the last race. So he's going to fight for every single place. I appreciate that about Max, and he was fighting to the very bitter end. Some former champions, when something happens to them early in the race, they just want to retire the car. But Max, head down, and he kept fighting all the way to the end.
I'm just gonna let that one go.
Sometimes I miss our co-host more times than other, Andy. That was for him.
Yeah, I'm just gonna sight ole. Hey, we're celebrating a Spanish victory, so this is where I learned to go ole and get out of the way. And the other point I was going to make about Max, his sister team, the AlphaTauris, did him no help, because apparently it was a piece of an AlphaTauri that got wedged into the floor that he ran over that was killing whatever downforce the floor had left in it. So I couldn't imagine how much fun that car was to drive. He initially thought he had a puncture. They boxed him. Was not a puncture. Then they put him on a set of hard tires, which he was not a happy camper about. But they really couldn't do anything else because he was out of mediums, and they couldn't put him on a soft at that point. So he kind of had to just kind of suck it up and deal. And I thought he did as best he could. Ocon gets past him, then Ocon has the issue. He pulls over, so Max gets back into P7. And then the fight with Mick at the end, like I said,
he ends up with 6 points, so really he only lost 6 points to Charles in the championship, which I know Charles is in second right now, but he's probably the number one competitor because it's not like they're going to let Checo fight with Max for the championship. So, good on Max for getting every point he could today. So moving up to 6th place, you got Lando Norris there. What do you want to say about Lando's day? Almost a 4th place finish.
could have been, maybe should have been a P4, if not for the Ocon safety car. The Ocon safety car really, really messed him up because he had just come in. I think it was only 3 or 4 laps on his set of hard tires. They were debating in the McLaren garage whether or not they should have put him on soft tires right then and there. I was actually in the camp of, at that moment, like, okay, soft tires. This is why they're here. Let's go put them on there. Let's go get racy. Let's see what happens. Lando ultimately made the call basically to say, I don't really feel confident on the soft tire. Fine, I get it. They put him on the set of hards. It was okay. Once the safety car happens, now we have to talk about McLaren and the decision wall yet again, because what happens is everybody's coming from P2 back. Everyone is coming in on that first lap to change over to the set of soft tires. Lando stays out, not because his team told him to stay out, but because they told him to box 500 meters too late. So I don't understand why they don't have the little graphic with the little balls representing the cars going around the track. Because I literally hear box now as he's coming down the main straight. And I'm like, well, you just fucked that one up. You did it again. So they still had enough of a gap to the guys behind that they did pit him on the next lap, put him on the soft tires. So right ultimate call on strategy, bad timing, cost him P5.
Fernando Alonso with an insanely quiet P5, I feel like. I didn't really pay attention to him too much during the race, and then all of a sudden, with a few laps to go, we had 5 drivers fighting for the second and third place on the podium. It was pretty wild, and Fernando was right there sticking his nose in. Charles, Lewis, and Sergio were all battling, so great finish for him.
I mean, the Alpine was a lot livelier on the soft tire than the McLaren definitely was. And if any of those top 4 had made any sort of a fatal mistake, Fernando was right in the position to capitalize on it. So it was a great final sequence. I mean, I love it when you get to see Crofty get out of breath, because that means you've had a great sequence. And he was, I think somebody had to give him some oxygen after that race, because I mean, that is an incredible sequence. Just the corners flowing the way that it was, different cars taking advantage at different times, Lewis going past 2 cars and then getting passed back by Checo. Absolutely amazing sequence.
Yeah, and Alonso had a great view of Leclerc, Hamilton, Perez going at it. And I'm sure he noticed a few things that he may have gotten in trouble for in the past that he might be trying out on track to see if he can get away with, because there's definitely some borderline incidents, especially with Sergio Perez. But let's move up to Charles Leclerc. This one hurt today, Andy. He started the day on the second restart, which I guess we have to get into here in a minute. But, we started again, and Leclerc just made just a bad decision on a move on the inside of Sergio Perez, and got his wing clipped, lost the right end plate of his front wing. So was losing some control there, and ultimately I think some pace, even though he was still really fast. But that didn't help his day at all. But even with that, he was faster than Sainz. And both times that he had pulled up to Sainz probably should have gotten out of the way faster. I think the team definitely could have stepped in a little bit sooner. I don't mind that they let him fight a little bit, but ultimately Sainz didn't have the pace that Charles had. And if Charles still had that end plate, I don't think it would have been close. He would have blown right by him. But then when that Ocon safety car came out, so Charles is in the lead at that point. Things are looking pretty good. I was a little bit worried about Lewis, just because I kind of always am, especially at the British Grand Prix. I've got some bad memories of Leclerc and Lewis there. But Ocon starts slowing on the straight there. Pretty much everybody knows he's not going to make it to the pit stop. So everybody knows it's going to be a virtual safety car at least, but more than likely a safety car, because he's going to stop in the middle of the track. So right there, I mean, if I was a team trying to win a championship, I'd have my guys ready to go pretty much instantly. But allegedly they weren't, so they weren't able to pit Charles. Instead, just Sainz, and then Lewis as well went in for the soft. So then at the restart after the safety car, I mean, Charles fought brilliantly, valiantly. Especially a little bit against Carlos Sainz, who was kind of told to back up the drivers behind him, which I didn't agree with that at all. I think let him race, especially when Sainz is going for his first win.
That's where we got.
Yeah, I mean that was stupid. And I agree with Sainz kind of not listening there and getting ahead of him. But then the battle that Charles then had with Hamilton and Perez was some of the best driving I think we've seen in quite some time. And just another instance of just real clean racing for the most part. I know Sergio was right on the edge there a little bit, going off track and pushing some guys off track there. But the battle between Leclerc and Hamilton, I mean, I'm surprised Charles is able to hang on so long without the clean air that some people think he needs to be an effective race car driver. But just to come back on Lewis a couple different times was awesome, especially with the broken front wing. I mean, he went around him on Cops. Lewis was able to make that apex no problem this year. Kind of weird how that works out, but I'm happy with Charles' performance. And I think if he would have just gotten a little help from the team, things would have been a lot different, and we would have had a double podium finish, which is what I really wanted out of the day, and didn't quite get it. So like I said before, he only gained an extra 6 points on Verstappen for the championship, but Ferrari gained some points, so can't be too upset with the day, but it definitely could have been a lot better for a Charles Leclerc fan like myself. So let's go ahead and get into the podium now. We got Lewis Hamilton on the third step, Sergio Checo Perez on the second step, and for the first time in his career, Carlos Smooth Operator Sainz gets his maiden victory. So where do you want to start here?
Well, I mean, just to go back to the pit stop, I mean, I guess, or the lack of the pit stop. Apparently, I guess Ferrari had, I think it was a good 17 seconds from when the safety car gets declared to where Leclerc...
And you got to add more time to that, because as soon as Ocon started slowing down, that's where the clock should start.
Right. And the natural decision that I think should have been made was double stack. Now, I've heard this theorized. I don't know this for sure, but Ched Kravitz in his post-race notebook suggests that Ferrari were a little bit gun-shy about doing a double stack based on what had happened to them in Monaco when they had the same thing. So if that's the case, that's a really bad decision because you don't have faith in the people you
when they've been doing so well all year at pit stops.
I mean, that's what...
Except for that one instance.
Well, right, exactly. I mean, for the most part, I've not seen Ferrari's slow pit stop be really a thing. This is why they practice 500-600 times during a week. Now, it's also interesting. And when I heard Kravitz make the point, I've been to a lot of races. I've seen a lot of Thursday pit walks. I've never seen teams really, truly practice double stack. I've seen them practice front wing change. I've seen them occasionally practice a rear wing change. Now, granted, that's only when the fans can go. So maybe they do it behind the closed doors and we never see it. But it's one of those things I wish teams would practice double stacks more for situations exactly like this. Because if it's a lack of confidence in your guys... And
I don't mean to cut you off, Andy, but like the gun-shy part and equating it to Monaco just like really drives me crazy because... Can you think of a more opposite track than Monaco than the British Grand Prix? Than Silverstone, it's like it's smooth, it's wide, it's insanely fast. You can pass. Like what the fuck? And there was, from what I've seen, there was about 4.5 seconds between Charles and Carlos going into that moment. So that's like perfect opportunity for a double stack. Even if it takes a couple extra seconds for Carlos, like you can make that time up. They had a fast car. And it's just like they just pissed it away. And then that's the type of stuff that pisses me off about Mattia, that I'll get into some even more on him later. But, like... is the hashtag I don't know if it's back yet, but it's getting close. Because, a couple weeks ago he's talking, well, we're not planning on trying to win the championship this year. This isn't the year, blah, blah. Okay, well then fucking let's try something and try and get a 1-2 finish. Like if the championship doesn't matter, like what are you trying to say here by keeping Charles out and not rolling the dice on a double stack? It just...
Well, I mean, when you split strategies, you're guaranteeing one of those strategies is not going to work. And as the rest of the top six told you, the right tire at that point was the soft compound tire. And I give Charles full beans for the defense that he tried to do against Lewis coming back. I mean, the sequence where Perez pushes Leclerc wide and Lewis zips through both of them, and then Perez and Leclerc both came back at Lewis was just an amazing moment. I was, I was on the edge of my seat. I'm going, whoa, and when you thought Leclerc was done, he wasn't. So there was obviously pace in the car, even despite the lack of the 5 points of aero or whatever it was. I think looking back on it, when you have 2020 hindsight, you can say, double stack was definitely the way to go. That's what.
But yeah, so the podium. Hamilton kind of got screwed by Mercedes with one of their patented long stops. It was about like a 4.6 second stop, something like that. So when he came back out, he was in not where they wanted him to be. In third place, I think was impressive for him today. The Mercedes has been getting better and better as the year has gone on. So I think that's a good finish for them. It would have been interesting to see where Russell could have finished if he made it past the first turn today. And then Sergio Perez, what a drive to go through what he went through and to make it all the way back to second. You talk about Lando Norris, terrible timing for that safety car. That had to have been the.
Oh my God! You couldn't have
just absolutely perfect.
Any better, because you couldn't have timed it any better for him, because he had to make another stop. He boxes, so he on the second restart he damages his front wing. Unlike Ferrari, Red Bull opted to box him. He goes all the way to the back and way in the back because it took like 15 seconds to change that front wing out. So he comes out. Now, what he did was he put his head down and he started setting fast laps every other time, especially early in the race. Now, Hamilton got it at the end of the race, and Hamilton had enough purples for his day too. But you were seeing Perez, fastest lap, in the clean air, getting back up to it, and just started picking guys off one at a time. That Red Bull, that was full beans Red Bull, comes all the way up, gets bailed out by that safety car because he then gets to come in, gets off the medium tire, gets out of the soft tire, and is right in the middle of that melee, and got his elbows out and did some rubbing his racing and some racing for good because it got him all.
And then Carlos Sainz, as I said, his maiden victory in F1, much deserved. I've been waiting a while to see this happen. Not his best drive. For all the bad luck he's had all year, I think he cashed in pretty much all the good karma he's built up today because a lot of things fell his way for him to get the win today. Not to take anything away from him. A great drive. He did have that moment early in the race where he gave up the lead to Max. That was not a good look. Not really sure what happened there. I haven't really heard any quotes or anything. Maybe it was a gust of wind or something, but
it looked like, could have been a wind thing. We've seen this happen a few times from Sainz where all of a sudden, like, the car just jinx on him or he jinx it or something happens. Now, he had enough runoff. He was able to come back on, keep going. He was fine. But I think you're right. I think as for all of the times where he was fully deserving of a win and it just didn't materialize. I don't know that he fully deserved the win today, but it materialized for him. And so therefore I'll take it. It's a feel good story. I'm happy for him. Now the focus goes, in the Ferrari camp, do we have a two-headed
I think
problem starting?
Something Sainz got to be little cognizant of is, he made the right call today, not listening to I don't want to call them team orders at the end to back up the pack for Charles, but be careful how many times you do that because you are the number 2 driver and it's Ferrari, so I would just caution that a little bit. But I love Carlos Sainz too, so I was very happy to see the win, get that monkey off his back, and see what he can do now. I think he's about 11 points back of Charles as we sit. So those two are really closely matched. And I'll expect that to be a battle for the majority of the year. Otherwise, we would have seen them a little bit more forceful with telling him to get behind Charles earlier in the race. Then one other thing, we didn't talk too much about the second restart because the red flag after the Zhou Guan Yu incident and Albon incident. So we did have a second start to the race, second standing start to the race. And just something that kind of annoyed me about it was it just seemed like more confusion in the commentators box and with the FIA and things about like, are the cars going back to their original formation? Are they staying where they were when the red flag came out? And it's frustrating, because I feel like even like the commentators weren't sure. And like I'm trying, like on my drive home today from Tennessee, I was like trying to think about it and what I wanted to say about it. And like part of it, like I feel like in all other sports, I don't want to say that the people and the fans are more knowledgeable. I just feel like we have a bigger base of knowledge. Like in baseball games, all 32 teams play 162 games a year. So there's thousands of games. We get to see every rule possible happen all the time. Football, there's 18 teams playing. There's 18 weeks. I'm sorry, with like 16 games each week. Like so, you see everything happen all the time. And in Formula One, we get 20 something races a year now. So like not everything happens all the time. So I get a little bit of that, but at the same time, it's like be more fucking confusing. Like it drives me crazy to not know what's going to happen, or there to just be this question. It's just like feels like not right.
Part of it to me, this is actually going to be the first time. I'm usually very much a Sky Sports supporter. I love the commentary team. I think they do a heck of a job under sometimes some really trying circumstances. But I thought this was a bit of unnecessary drama building. The rule is actually really clear. And the FIA told the teams about 10 minutes after the red flag came out, really what was going to happen. Like they said, the FIA, and I knew this because of, and I'm just saying, I don't know if other teams do it, but, I've talked about being on that McLaren team stream. And that was one of the things, like it came out to both drivers right away. The FIA has told us nobody made the safety car line. So it's going to go back to the original order. I knew that 10 minutes into it. And then it looked like the Sky folks were trying to flip through the rule book and try to understand what was happening. I'm like, did nobody get that same team message that went out to everybody that said this is what we're going to do? And there really wasn't a whole lot of question about it. There was more question about George Russell being able to maybe come back into the race or not. Again, we said that was an in and out rule, and that was correct. But to me, I knew what they were going to do because they didn't set a sector. If you don't set at least one sector and nobody made it, you have no choice but to go back to what it was. So the ruling here, I'm all for roasting the FIA. You know that. I love to roast the FIA when I get the chance to. But here, they did it correctly, and I thought it was a bit of unnecessary drama building. When you should just really have a producer says. Well,
thank you for clarifying that, Andy, because I was ready to bring back or to bust out the hashtag Bring Back Massey, but now I just blame Sky and that's it. So I'm fine with that. All right, so good recap there of the race. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and talk about standings, some fan emails, awards, and predictions. Welcome back to Season 4, Episode 25 of the Outlap F1 Podcast, part of the Ship It Studios Podcast Network. This is the 2022 British Grand Prix race review. I am your host, James, along with my wonderful co-host, Andy. We just broke down the entire race, qualifying through Sunday, and now I'm going to break down the driver standings. Top 10, anyway. We got Max Verstappen still in first place with 181 points. Sergio Checo Perez behind him with 147. Charles Leclerc now in third place with 138. Carlos Sainz moves up to fourth place with 127 points. George Russell drops after ending his streak of top 5 finishes. He's in fifth place now with 111. Lewis Hamilton, sixth place with 93. Lando Norris sits in seventh place with 58 points. Valtteri Bottas in eighth with 46. Esteban Ocon in ninth with 39. And Fernando Alonso in 10th place with 28 points. Andy, run through the team standings, please.
So our team standings in position 1 is Red Bull on 328 points. Second place is Ferrari on 265. Third is Mercedes on 204. Now here comes the chasm. Fourth place, McLaren on 73. Fifth is Renault on 67. Sixth is Alfa Romeo on 51. Seventh, AlphaTauri on 27. Still in eighth place, but moving ever closer to that AlphaTauri is Haas, now with 20. In ninth place is Aston Martin with 18. And in 10th place, still on the 3 points, but they have scored them, Williams-Mercedes with 3.
Thank you, Andy. So now we move into some fan emails. First off, we got Rachel Fleming saying, what a race. I don't even know where to begin. Going to be hugely positive. Great win for Carlos and made the right call not to protect Leclerc because he was right. And also, Mick Schumacher points. Brilliant result for him and a really strong race. Beat his teammate as well. Great racing with Max and did not ruin his chances. Finally, great to see Zhou okay after that horror crash. So I agree. Excellent win for Carlos. Exciting for Schumacher points.
I agree with all the points up and down. I mean, this was a great race. It's a good win for Carlos. I was glad to see it. Mick Schumacher getting points. The monkey comes off of his back. You could tell in the post race, just the relief, like the weight of the world off of his shoulders. So we're going to find out now, James, whether or not your theory of Mick or the consensus theory of Mick is correct, because I think this was kind of the tipping point. So it'll be interesting to watch him and Haas in the next few races for sure.
Yeah, I don't mind being a bit of a contrarian if you haven't noticed, so I will. I'm planting my stake in that take, and I'm going to leave it there. Our boy Dave Doherty says your thoughts on lap 1 and Mercedes' race. So we dove into lap 1 quite a bit. At the start of our rundown there, Mercedes' race, well, really only had one guy racing. I thought, a good day for Lewis to be on the podium. Anytime Mercedes makes a podium this year, I think is a highlight. And he may have even been able to get a little higher without that pit stop that Mercedes kind of hampered him a little bit with being over 4 seconds. So could have been a second place.
Yeah, I mean, they were in the fight for the win, I think, really for the first time that we've been able to say that in this season. So if that is a harbinger of things to come, if all the upgrades are working, I mean, the ifs are actually starting to get checked off the board here a little bit. Like we talked about, they had to get the bouncing right. It looks like they've done that. They had to get the car more slippy. It looks like they've done that. If this can continue. Now, I also think this track really, really suited them because it was smooth, because of the nature of the corners. It'll be interesting to see if they can duplicate this type of performance in Austria, a very different track. If they can, you got 3 teams at least in the mix. Not necessarily, they're not to Red Bull yet, but they are in the mix to possibly stick their noses in and make this interesting.
Yeah, give me more of that 5 drivers battling for the 2 spots on the podium. Inject that right here.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, Mattia did throw a little shade after the race at Mercedes with a comment about he doesn't know how many different iterations of the car they can come out with and still stay under the cap. But, congrats to them for finding a way to do it so far. And, of course, we haven't really touched on the news about the alleged flexible floor or what's the word I'm looking for? Not the mast, but the board
or
underneath
the bouncing
the car.
rule. Yeah, the porpoising.
Yeah. And then, so there's some things coming out with Red Bull and Ferrari. I know the Mercedes fans now, it's just the cheating cars. So I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of that. So we'll keep an eye on that as we move on.
I mean, it is still very much an early days story. There's a lot of conjecture. There's not a whole lot of necessarily proven anything at this point. It is something I want to stay on top of because I find team principal politics to be so delicious.
Yeah.
So I did want to go and watch that. I did hear, especially even Omar Safnar was throwing some shade at his part of the team principal's press conference saying, well, we know there's 2 teams that might have a problem. Well, maybe you know, and maybe you don't know. And, and we'll see kind of how it all plays out. But we do know the one thing I can tell you about the porpoise thing is this was the race where they kind of calibrated their metric. So moving forward, the FIA is going to get kind of involved. And if teams are porpoising too badly, expect some adjustments or something to be done about it based on driver safety. So that I know for sure is going to happen.
Yep. So moving on to Cherry Coke, who says, could they have pitted Leclerc and Sainz for softs? See some people suggesting they could have. Also, Max was definitely a little suspect with Mick at the end. I, for one, believe they could have pitted both Leclerc and Sainz, even if that would have put them behind. Because I also think that if they would have double stacked, Mercedes may have left Lewis out there.
It would have been interesting to see.
Yeah, because track position is not necessarily super important at Silverstone because you can definitely pass there. And I think Leclerc and Sainz, I think the Ferrari was better than the Mercedes as it has been all year. But that would have been really interesting. I really think they could have pulled that off. But we'll never know. And then for Max and being suspect with Mick, we already got into that. I think it was just good, hard racing with Max trying to control a really unruly car today. All right, so thank you for the emails. Oh, go ahead, Andy.
No, I just said agreed. I mean, like I said, the only parts that are even close is the very last lap, and I think there's 2 corners. And like we talked about it earlier, when Mick makes the conscious decision to back out because he didn't have the position, That's what should happen there.
Yeah.
You can defend still in Formula One. I want to be, I don't know if I'm going to be the last guy who says, give me a good defense and that's just as good offense, but I enjoy good defending. I thought it was okay.
How very Chicago of you, Andy. Loving a good defense. Thank you for all the emails. And if you want to email the show, questions, comments, you can email us at chatnow@outlapf1.com or go ahead, slide into those DMs. They are open. All right, so let's move on to our weekly awards. And, of course, we start with rubbish. Andy, why don't you read yours? Then I'll go, and then you can read John's after I do mine.
All right, so if you've listened to our preview episode, you knew we dealt with the subject of one, Yuri Vips, and what I thought was a torpedoing of his career. And then High Tech Racing said, I heard you, Andy, and you're a liar. Because apparently he was allowed to pee in his car, even after all that. So I guess the question is, the issue for me is apparently there's no consequences if you're a fair-haired gentleman of a certain type of persuasion. What message are we sending? Like, I understand why certain groups of people always feel like they get the short end of the stick here. There should be consequences to what he did. He should not have been in the car this weekend. It was an awkward feel. Every time I saw him on track, it made me feel icky. Wrong move by High Tech here. Totally wrong move. There should have been consequences for it.
All right. I had a lot of rubbish to pick from, which, again, is weird to me considering how much I enjoyed this race. But there was quite a few things that kind of irked me. But mainly the number one thing, not necessarily, not just Mattia Binotto, but more specifically his finger, Andy. Right after the race ended, Charles Leclerc, the first one to Carlos Sainz's car to congratulate his teammate on his maiden victory. I was like, hell yeah, Charles, because you got screwed over, and you know what? You're still happy for your teammate. That's awesome. Moments later, we see a shot of Mattia Binotto in front of Charles Leclerc, wagging his finger in his face, having a conversation with him. Now, it's weird to me because, like I said, Charles had already congratulated Carlos on the victory. And, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember a time that Charles has ever said anything just way out of line or wrong in an interview while being at Ferrari. He's like the consummate Ferrari person. And he's had plenty of fucking practice at being disappointed with a Ferrari driver and having things go against him. And he's never bashed the team. He's never said the wrong thing. Maybe on the team radio while racing in the heat of the moment, but like not in the media. Like, he's smarter than that. He's better than that as a driver. But Mattia to wave his finger in there, it's like, I don't know how Charles didn't tell him in that moment, because I know I would have. But if you don't take that finger out of my fucking face, I'm going to break it. I'm going to bite it off, Mattia. Now get out of my way, because that was ridiculous. It's treating him like a child. And I mean, I've been positive Mattia all season, but like more stuff like that, and I will turn right back on him real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it was about. Hey, you don't bash the team, or but what surprised me, and I didn't notice it until even the second time I watched the race, that it was immediately after the race.
Yeah.
Like, I had thought when I saw the shot of it, I'm like, okay, this has to be like on his way to the media pen. He's come down. No, like, he was meeting him before he even got weighed. Like, this was at the weigh bridge. So, I mean, obviously, to me, that tells me I knew, like, if I'm covering my ass that quickly, I knew I fucked up.
Yeah.
That's what that tells me.
Yeah.
I knew I fucked up. And I just want everybody to know, hey, we don't throw each other under. Maybe that's what the intent was. It comes off as a terrible look.
Awful.
As far as I'm concerned. And we've been waiting to see what happens when this two-headed Ferrari monster starts to happen. I hope this isn't a harbinger of things to come, because we need that team to get in and back for, a championship fight. But yeesh, not a good
Well,
look.
and Andy, what did Charles say when they asked him what Mattia was saying to him?
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's a good thing I didn't have anything in my mouth at the time. Otherwise, it would have been the spit take of the century, because Charles's response to Natalie Pinkham in the media pen, oh yeah, he was cheering me up.
Exactly. Charles knows what to say and what not to say when talking to the media. So, Exhibit A.
And that diffused it, and it gave Natalie nowhere to go, and then she had to move on and talk about the race.
Well done, Charles. right, why don't you give us John's rubbish for the weekend here?
All right, so John's rubbish is pointed at that same Charles Leclerc, who, in his mind, damaged his own car, then repeatedly asked the team to be given the win. I hope Sainz would have said, "Go F yourself," had they tried that from the lead. And he also gives a rubbish out to Max Verstappen, who also damaged his own car by running wide, gives up what would have been a cakewalk win, is then very dirty in his defense of Mick, runs Mick off multiple times. He's lucky Mick was desperate and smart for those first points. I'm glad the world is starting to see that Hamilton and anyone else can dogfight without contact, but Max and anyone else close is going to make contact. What is the common denominator? I wonder. Max should have been given a 5-second penalty.
Well,
okay.
Well, Charles Leclerc, yes, I said he made a bad decision trying to go the inside of Checo, and he did damage his own car. However, he was still faster than Sainz. He was faster, and he did not repeatedly ask the team to be given the win. He said he should be in front of Sainz because he had guys chasing him down, which any driver does. Lewis would do that, but whatever.
And in the first instance, Ferrari made the call by boxing Sainz, and in the second one, they told Sainz, "You have to make this lap time." Yeah. And for a while, he was doing it. So I understood that, but it ultimately came down to what they did under the safety car. None of that actually mattered in the end because it ultimately came down to that safety car decision. So
yeah, and then I mean, we've already talked about the Max and the Mick thing. We got to be careful not to put Lewis on this pedestal because he's not this perfect driver that can go wheel to wheel to everybody. Just this year alone, off the top of my head, the K-Mag battle in Spain. I mean, whatever. I don't want to get into it, but I can't wait for John to be back so we can have these conversations.
No, I mean, I am, as I've said before, I did the big old ole to this earlier. But I'm a rubbing is racing type of guy as long as you don't go over the line or endanger anybody else's, safety or anything like that. I thought it was to the limit. But again, I am okay with the tactic of closing off a corner and letting, what is it, that it's like a reverse triangle that disappears, as you get more and more into a corner. I'm okay with that being an okay thing to use as defense.
All right, let's move up to the analysis paralysis. I'll go first. It's Ferrari. Just double stack. Like, I whatever. I don't know. I don't want to beat this dead horse anymore. It's not prancing right now. It's dead. And yeah, they should have double stacked. Andy, who do you got?
I'm going to give this one to Ferrari as well. A split strategy means that someone is getting screwed, and you chose to screw the driver with the better track position. Weird. That's all I'll call that. Weird. An honorable mention, I mentioned this earlier, something needs to happen between McLaren, the strategy desk, and the decisions that they make. When you call to box your driver 500 feet or 500 meters after the pit lane entrance, he can't box then. So don't do that. Make it go faster. Make it go faster, or someone on that team has to have an override button that just says, this is what we're doing. I get going to a decision desk, and I get trying to be, build consensus and all that other stuff, but this is twice now that it's happened. It cost Lando, I thought, an easy P5 today.
All right. Will you read John's analysis paralysis?
All right. So John is saying, anyone bitching at Ferrari for not making Sainz move out of the way. And this I actually agree with. Unlike Red Bull, Ferrari remembered that they have two drivers. He gained a lot of respect for Binotto today for letting them fight for most of the race and for I don't know exactly what he meant to go do here. Blessing out Leclerc for his radio comments post-race. So I don't know entirely what that means, but okay.
Yeah, the part about letting them fight, I'm okay with to an extent. You give him a delta, you give the lead driver a delta, and if they can't match it, then the guy behind you has to go in front of you. That's the team sport. They're the team part of the sport there. But for blasting Leclerc, blessing whatever he's trying to say there, I don't agree with that whatsoever. But dark horse, Andy, what do you got?
I'm giving this one to Mick Schumacher and Team USA. Haas with the double points. And when's the last time? I actually wanted to look this up. I should have looked this up and find out last time Haas scored double points. It's got to be like 17 or 18.
I want to say it happened at least once since we've started the podcast. So it's got to be in the last few seasons. I remember it being a big deal. But I want to say there was multiple DNFs that time, too. That's usually the only time it happens. Want to read John's Dark Horse?
John's is for Mick Schumacher, first points, and avoided Max driving like a, quote, crazy Karen in order to get it done.
And then for my Dark Horse, I'm actually giving it to Alonso because, like I said earlier, I didn't even see him all race, and all of a sudden he's got a top 5. So true Dark Horse fashion right there. And yeah, I'm not going to give it to Mick because I'm still on the Mick sucks take, and I'm not going to give that up for a while. So let's move on to driver of the day. You kick us off, Andy.
All right, so I'm going to give this one Sergio Checo Perez from dead last after the revamped lap 1 to all the way to P2, putting his head down and doing the work, putting in fastest laps to catch himself back up in the clean air, getting through the field once he was out of the clean air for a P2 result. Yes, it was bailed out by the safety car, but that's how that's how shit goes sometimes. One hell of a drive through the field. So Sergio Checo Perez, my driver of the day.
Thank you. John's driver of the day, he says the entire podium. Each of them attacked, defended, and overcame for one hell of a race. I can agree with him on that one. However, I am going with Sergio Perez as well. I mean, you said it well there. Just to overcome what he had to overcome there and finish in second was just absolutely a mega drive by him. Some people might think it's weird that nobody's giving it to Sainz for his maiden win, but honestly, he was slower than Charles today, and he almost binned it while he was trying to stay out in front of Max. So driver of the day, he was not, but he did get the win, and I think he'd prefer the win over our driver of the day award.
Exactly. Well, it was, did you hear the radio when he's coming in on the cool down lap and he goes, we're sorry we didn't get the fastest lap. And Carlos says, I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually have a special award for the inanimate object of the day, that being the catch fence, because boy, did it do its job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the halo.
There's probably a number
halo.
of people in that section that had to go buy some new team issued pants after that, because the one video from somebody's cell phone or something, the dude that was like sitting on the stairs and he gets up and just was like, nope, and starts walking right away from it.
There's a marshal who does a full out turtle. And you're justified to do the turtle there because, like, what the hell else you think? Like, of all the things you thought you were going to have happen when you're reaching for flags and stuff, you didn't think that was going to happen. I'll guarantee.
Yeah, in America at baseball games, you might have to worry about an errant fly ball or a foul ball or maybe a bat here and there coming into the stands. But in F1, you have giant F1 cars flying at you, so pretty scary stuff. All right, Andy, why don't you break down our predictions from the weekend?
So the predictions, we were close on a lot of things, but they ended up kind of being a bit of a hot mess at the end of the day. We'll start with our clubhouse leader, and that was Deanna, who I'm sorry to say gets a no score for the weekend. Third place was John. He got 1 point. He had Sergio Perez on the podium. James, you had 2 points. You had Sergio Perez on the podium, and you got the prop bet because you bet against Team GB. George did not make the checkered flag.
I don't get a bonus point for saying who wasn't going to finish?
Stuart, we'll take that to the stewards, but I don't think you're going to get a good decision there. I ended up with 2 points. Basically because Joe Slow rides again. My quali lap time, thank you, Rain, and my race fastest lap were the slowest of everybody, and the race fastest lap was in the 1:30s. We were actually not that far off on race fastest lap. So at least we were pretty close on that. But it has compressed the prediction season standings. We now have a 3-way tie for P1. Deanna on 24, John on 24, myself on 24. James, still got a little bit of work to do, but you're coming on strong.
I feel like Fernando Alonso right now, watching you three battle, and I'm just waiting for the right moment to strike.
Yep. And you know what? What a better time to do it than next weekend.
That is right. All right, so great, epic weekend at the British Grand Prix. Definitely one of the best tracks. Typically an exciting race coming out of there. So always enjoy when they go to Silverstone. Can't wait to do it again next year. And can't wait. We got a back-to-back weekend. Where are we going next week? Is it Austria?
We're going to the Red Bull Ring in
always a good
Austria.
one.
So we go from one person's home race to the other championship protagonist's home race. You think there's going to be some orange there? I wonder. Just a little bit.
All right, and I think that's it for now. Wednesday night, expect to hear me and Andy with our race preview. And it looks like it's not raining anymore, Andy, so maybe we'll get some fireworks tonight, or at least in my neck of the woods, the sun's out. So try and get some sleep tonight with all the booms and bangs going on around you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll do. And we didn't actually formally say it. Congrats to Logan Sargent on his first F2 win, his first F2 pole, and his first F2 win. So American drivers showing really well in Great Britain this weekend. Team USA, hey, you go boys. So for John, who's not here, for Deanna, who's not here, for James, it's been Andy. This is always super fun to do. And as always, whether it be good or bad, lay all your laps. Be fast.